All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Griffin Hospital Center for Healthy Living. My name is Mike Desjardins. I manage employee wellness at Griffin Health, and I oversee our activities here that we do out of our teaching kitchen. We are very fortunate to have a really amazing space here. We've had various people facilitating, different chefs, different speakers, and our goal here is to always educate the community on things surrounding nutrition. We focus a lot on eating healthy, instituting lifestyle change, and giving people options. You know, it's tough these days with the rising cost of food and people just getting so caught up in their everyday work days that they don't think of different ways to consume food that's healthier, more nutritious. We're seeing a lot with even the food banks, you know, a depletion of nutritious food. So we've tried really put a great effort in to get fresh produce and more nutritious food down to those people as well. So, but we are here. We're at Corey Walk, and tonight we're featuring a ham and bean soup recipe. The thought behind this was, you know, beans are such a great product loaded with protein, fiber. They're nutritious. There's so many things you can do with them. And honestly, they're inexpensive. So when Katie and I were chatting, she's like, you know, we should do a ham and bean soup. Most people have ham around the holidays, and it would be a great idea to show them how they have leftovers. Let's throw that into a soup, combine it with the power-packed protein of beans, and come up with something that's hearty and rich and good. So, and that falls in line with our healthy eating series. We're always talking about going with a more plant-forward based approach. In case you don't know, we're thinking plant-forward means it's just using more plant-based food into your dishes, more protein from fruit, soy, beans, different things, different ways to get protein other than just consuming meat. You know, there's a lot of research out there that suggests cutting down on red meat, how vital it is for us. So some of us can do that. Some of us occasionally will have a steak or a burger. It's fine. But, you know, thinking of including more plant-based proteins into your diet will really, really help the body's systems overall. So that being said, we are live streaming. So people that are on Facebook, if they're watching us, they could ask questions of Katie or I, and we will do our best to answer them for you. So my facilitator tonight is Katie Poole, former executive director of Massaro Farm. She's been a fan favorite here at the center for a while now. We've done quite a few classes. Was this a complete year for us?
Yes.
It was. I was just going to say, we should have a hot chocolate toast to that. I mean,
Yes.
So, Katie, thank you so much for being with us in Griffin for this past year. We've put together some really great content, and this is going to take us into the new year now. So I'm going to transfer everything over to Katie and let her run through. We have a small little presentation slide deck, and then we're going to go into the demonstration. So thank you all.
All right. So good evening, everybody here in person, everybody with us online. As Mike said, my name's Katie Poole. I'm not a professional chef. I'm not a nutritionist, but just through the course of working with farms and just my own health journey and members of my family, we've done a lot of our own research, and that's what allows me to, enables me to come here to you with all of these wonderful ideas and recipes. Beans, as we all know, we are going to focus on dry beans tonight. I'm using mostly dry. I do have one cheap can of chickpeas that I'm going to use. And I just want to start out actually with a couple of notes of gratitude. First to Mike and the Griffin team for having us here, for having such an amazing space, for inviting me in and always being flexible and adaptable to all my crazy ideas. For those of you that might have come last month when we did a 20-person canning event and everybody went home with canned products. And I assure you that was not the last time. We will be doing more of that, so I am excited about that. Gratitude to all the folks who have been attending all year long, who keep coming back, who keep sharing this information, taking it home and cooking for themselves and their families. So a note of gratitude as we wind up the year. Yes, I was also thinking about that on the way here. All right, so you all have in front of you a ham and bean recipe. And the reason why, as Mike already described, that I was thinking about this, why it's such a great thing to have this time of year is that often it doesn't have to be ham, but often we have bones left over from meat, right? So it could be a turkey carcass from Thanksgiving, it could just be a chicken from buying a rotisserie chicken at the store, and it could be something that we have used to feed a large group of people, such as a ham with a bone in it. Now, I'll talk about in a moment, as we're going through slides, like alternatives if you want to do this on a vegetarian basis. But you can see from that recipe in front of you that we are using dried beans, and I'll talk about how pound for pound, why they're so much more economical even than cans. But this did take some time. I was a little nervous that even if I started it in front of you, that using an electronic pressure cooker, which is what we commonly know now as an Instapot, that it would be like exactly an hour, and then you have to allow this thing to like let off steam. So I went ahead and cooked it like at 2 o'clock. So just released the steam before I put it in the car to bring it to you all. And you can see all of the ingredients that were listed there. I did use a spiralized ham, and I cut a lot of the meat off just to allow that bone to fit in there. And then I used, for this particular recipe, you can use whatever you like. I personally have really come to like using Great Northern beans. That's generally a white bean. It's very easy on my stomach, and I do notice, and we've talked about this in past classes, that sometimes we interact more with certain beans because they have more starches, or just because our bodies react to that particular bean. So if you've eaten beans in the past and you feel like my body doesn't like that, try different ones. I will encourage you, but for this recipe, I did use Great Northern beans. I used a little bit of potato because I had that from my fall farm share. This is also a wonderful recipe, not only to use up bones, but also for the root crops that we're often seeing in season this time of year. So carrots, tubers, whether it's a sweet potato or a white potato or a red potato or even a blue potato, onions. And then I did use a little bit of seasoning this, carrots, onions, garlic. I did not, because I was using a ham, I did not put any salt in this at all. I tried this recipe about a week ago, and I was really happy that I didn't salt anything, because with the ham in it, it came out almost perfect. So not, I think I would have added salt, it would have been too salty. So I went ahead and soaked these beans overnight, and I'm going to treat you to a couple different recipes today, actually 3 to be precise. So we're going to be using pinto, the white beans, and black beans. I soaked them all overnight. The nice thing I like about working with beans is that even though they do take a long time, it's mostly hands-free time. So you're just putting them on and letting them cook, whether it's on a stovetop, in a crock pot, in a pressure cooker, and you're really not interacting with it at all. So it's a very easy thing to prepare. So I soaked these beans overnight, drained them, and then I added everything to the pot. Using in an Instapot, I turned it on for 70 minutes. And that means that there was probably 10 or 15 minutes lead time during which the pot comes up to pressure, then it's cooking for 7 minutes, and then it has the time during which it is actually depressurizing, which you can release manually, or you can just let it come down by itself. So you can see that if you add all those windows of time together, it is quite a bit of time, but it's mostly time in which I'm not interacting with this at all. I'm just turning things on or putting them in a bowl and letting them do their thing. So is anybody here cooked with beans at home? Like, is anybody using dried beans? No? Okay, great. I got cued into dried beans probably, I have certainly used them in the past, and I think I've probably used lentils more than anything because my mom always liked lentils. So they were something that we always had in our household. But back in 2019, I was working on a program with the let's say it was the Valley United Way and Massaro Community Farm, where we were pairing our fall produce, fall and winter produce, with pantry items that families were getting from their local food pantries and putting them together so that they could create something, right? A meal with what they were getting, both fresh from the farm and from the food pantry. And the food pantry said, we have a lot of dried beans and we can't get people to use these. And so it really made me go back to like those basics, right? Of using dried beans, looking into them, and seeing what the benefits are. So we're gonna start with that. So I've already told you about our bean soup, which you have the recipe in front of you. Before I click slides, I just wanna mention I also have some black beans here, and these were dried beans that I both soaked, and then I cooked those for about 30 minutes, and they will take different amounts of time too. And then I also soaked, and I'm simmering for you, some pinto beans, which we are going to use to make some refried beans. So we're gonna try a few different things today. So having said all that, let me just come over here and get you started. So beans, particularly dried beans, really go back to the time of when human beings started being rooted in agriculture. So when they were starting that transition from being hunter-gatherers to more agricultural beings, right? They were starting to settle in one place. And the thing that makes beans so easy to work with is that when they do dry, they are very light and portable, right? So even though there was sort of this interim period where you're having both agricultural practices, but still some migratory things happening with human beings, it made it very easy to save seeds for future generations, and also, you know, to port them and carry them with them wherever they were going. So this definitely lent itself to the increase of agricultural practices. There are records of, we see more of the lentils and chickpeas happening and being used more in the Middle East and Mesoamerica, slightly earlier than Mesoamerica, which is probably, you know, around the same time, but definitely more evolving 1,000 years or two later, and then different varieties coming about, mostly due to different geographic and climate issues, right? Like, so different, what am I trying to say? Geographies, different climate zones. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. So why dry beans? Again, I mentioned earlier that I had done this project with a food pantry 6 years ago, and dried beans really are most economical. So you can get beans, and I'll talk about this at the end, from a variety of different sources, but I wanted you all to be tasting things today that you could reproduce at home, which means you want to buy things that you can get in your supermarket. So there are places around that you can get bulk and such, but I wanted to use something that we can all pretty much find easily. So Goya tends to generally be a pretty reliable brand. The nice thing I do like about their packaging, sometimes when you get off brands or generic ones, there's no expiration date on them. So they do use a date. It goes out about 2 or 3 years. But these are going to be things that you can find at your grocery store. Now, when you buy a pound of beans, 1 pound of these, so I only did half the package. You can see it makes a lot. So in other words, 1 pound of beans, and I did about half of the black bean bag, but if you did the whole thing, it's probably the equivalent of anywhere between 4 and 6 cans of beans. So that small amount, and you can imagine, you know, 4 or 6 cans lined up. And I think these days we're probably paying about $2 a can. So you're definitely paying for the human intervention of processing and salt and the use of a can versus being able to have them in a dried format. You can see here the comparison, as Mike was talking about, doesn't mean you have to give up in meat entirely, but as we are seeing grocery costs rise, being able to incorporate these into your diet or even just mix them in with the meats that you might be preparing is definitely going to be a cost benefit for all of you. And then also, I never like to leave out, since I worked on farms for many years, the environmental impact. So I think we talked about that when we were talking about beef, and we did a whole unit on plants and alternative proteins. So we were talking about the environmental impact, and I can't remember that stat, but it was something like 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. Not to mention the land use and the methane that it produces. So just things to keep in mind, that the nice thing, and this is why we're seeing more things like dried pea proteins that you can use, right, as a protein supplement. There's a reason why we're seeing pea milk in the grocery stores. So peas and beans are nitrogen fixers. So when farms are growing them, this is actually replenishing the soil. So it is a regenerative practice to grow beans. beans, which is another wonderful thing and why they are much more environmentally light on our planet than actually producing meat. So I didn't want to leave that out. All right. When do these make sense? So there are times, obviously, I have canned beans in my pantry. It makes sense to have them if you want to do a small serving. If it's just you or just two of you, it's hard to cook a large amount because often there will be lots left over. So it was easy for me to cook for all of you tonight, but you can see even doing these 3 recipes, I only used half of each of those bags. So they definitely go a long way, which means you can cook them in advance. So this is something personally that I would do on a Sunday afternoon or a snowy or rainy day when I'm hanging out in the house and it's quiet. And again, we talked earlier about the fact that you can certainly put them on and not have a whole lot of intervention, but you are going to get larger volumes. So just keep that in mind. You can use these in prepared foods that you can then freeze those meals. So oftentimes, I mean, I am making a salad for you tonight, but most of the time when you are cooking with beans, they are meals that can be easily freezable. So they can be made in advance for you. Certainly cooking for a crowd, so that's why I wanted to use the ham bone today, because oftentimes you are coming off of, and this time of year, getting together with folks and cooking for a crowd. And then certainly if you're just trying to save money generally. So incorporating some more beans and dried beans will definitely lower your grocery store bill. All right, so getting started. A couple of notes. So one of the complaints I was hearing from my folks when I did that program several years ago, I mentioned, is people were saying, I just can't get the beans tender enough. And there are a couple of tricks. So the reason why I mentioned the expiration date is because beans can get old. They can get quite old, and the longer they sit, you will lose the nutritional value. It doesn't mean that they're not still edible, but they will often not get as soft as you might expect them to get. So look for things that have an indication that they're either organic, which means they were grown in fairly recent cycle, or also have dates on them so that you know that they are not too old. Soaking them, so I already mentioned this earlier. When you are soaking your beans, it's not only softening them for you, but it is also releasing some of those heavy starches that either bother us gastrointestinally or just make them resistant to getting soft during cooking. So that's another benefit of soaking them for that overnight period. You can do it for 3 to 4 hours, but what is easier than putting it in a bowl and just leaving it on the counter when you go to bed, right? Can add a little bit of salt, but the key here also is if you are going to incorporate any acids. So let's say you are going to make a tomato-based soup, which I did put some tomato paste in our soup today, or you're going to add a vinegar or a citric acid, so something like lemon or orange. You want to wait and add that at the end because that can make the beans resistant to releasing those starches and make it harder for them, literally harder. They will stay harder instead of getting softer for you. So that is another trick too. You also might have particularly hard water where you are. So if you've tried it a couple times, you say, I know these beans are really fresh. I followed all the steps. I soaked them with some salt water. Why are they still not getting soft? You may have really hard water. So you can try a liter of filtered water for your cooking recipe or just to soak them in overnight. So that is one thing, sort of the last ditch effort, right? To really making sure that you get the beans as soft as you would like them. And then of course, consider the method in which you are cooking. So I used an Instapot here and I also cooked some on the stovetop because I like things to be accessible for everyone. So this was given to me, but before that was given to me, I insisted I was not going to buy one. I still have my old school Presto pressure cooker, which I do use, a crock pot, or just simmering on the stove. So any of these methods can work. It's just that some will take longer than others. But I do think that cooking in a pressure cooker, and I actually could not find any research that supported me on this, but given that what we just did with our canning event here last month, when you pressurize cooking, you're actually getting to a heat temperature that is above boiling. So boiling is 212 degrees. When you cook under pressure, you actually get to a higher heat. So I'm of the opinion that getting to that higher heat point, whether it's in an old school pressure cooker or in an Instapot, you're getting a higher temperature, which allows those beans to break down even further. So to me, that seems like a really good secret to getting to those softer. It's going to be a little bit different, right? So the black beans and the pinto beans were really nice on the stove. They both cooked down nicely for you all today. So you know, but there are others that have a harder consistency. It might be a lima bean or something like that. So just thinking about the different beans that you're using could impact. And the nice thing about them is they have lots of different textures and flavor profiles. And so even if a recipe calls for something specific, don't be afraid to try something that you have or that you prefer, or maybe that might be easier for the cooking method that you have. All right. So just a little highlight here. Has anybody here heard of the Three Sisters? We have any gardeners in the crowd? No. Okay. So the interesting thing about beans is they are super high in protein, serving for serving. Not nearly as high as what we get from chicken, beef, or fish. And most of them are not a complete protein. So when we talked about protein a month or two ago, a complete protein means something has the 9 essential amino acids that our bodies does not create on its own. And beans do not have that, even as healthy as they are for us. However, indigenous people made this work for them by planting them and eating them in conjunction with squash and corn. So squash, corn, and beans in indigenous and Native American cultures are often grown together because together, eaten together, they actually make a complete protein. So whenever you hear somebody talk about the Three Sisters, that is what they're talking about. So you can put that together in a recipe for yourself, but just a note about beans not having complete protein, but how you can get there. All right. They are also good for us in so many other ways. Mike was already highlighting some of this. They being a soluble fiber or a fiber product, a plant-based product over a meat-based product, there's all kinds of health benefits to this. So we're going to see obviously, they are cholesterol-free. We're going to see them being free of saturated fats. There was something else I was going to mention here. But definitely lowering our incidence for any heart disease or stroke. So overall, very good to incorporate more of the plant-based proteins when you can, when it's an option, over the health benefits of meat and also the environmental impact. Other things that we're seeing. So we have talked about this before in this class. Does anybody know what I mean when I say blue zones and blue zone diets? You've been here before. We talked about this, right? Yeah. So blue zones are areas around the planet where people live the longest into their 90s to be centenarians, and they are living that long in a healthy way. So it means they're not relying on a lot of medication, and a lot of research has been done on this. There's a wonderful Netflix documentary called Blue Zones, which goes around to 7 different locations around the planet where people live the longest. And they are finding actually that beans are a primary source of protein for people who live in blue zones around the planet. So supports longevity of life as well as a healthy gut microbiome. They contribute to inflammation control. I know we're hearing a lot about foods that cause inflammation, mostly processed foods today. So again, by using dried or even canned beans, you're getting away from more processed foods. So great for inflammation. They have a lower glycemic index than other carbohydrates. So they're not gonna, if you are either prone to type 2 diabetes or diabetes in your family, small amounts of beans are great. They will make you feel full longer, or they will, if you haven't gotten into that category yet, hopefully help you stave off getting into a type 2 diabetes situation. And as well, they are associated with overall lower weights for people. Yeah. Corn. Yes, yeah. All right. Any questions so far? I know I'm kind of blowing through this, and then we'll get to cooking.
No, you're flying.
Okay.
I think when you mentioned the fiber, they have a high satiety index too, so they fill you, just like you were saying. So they process through the gut slower, and it keeps you fuller longer and reduces those cravings.
Yeah.
And it helps keep you regular if you're not. So But you'll see what Katie mentioned about the three sisters. A lot of some of these pre-made bean dips and mixes have those in them now. You'll see the combination of beans, corn, and squash.
Yep.
Even restaurants serve that as a side, as a veggie side sometimes, which is interesting. I don't know if they're marketing it as the three sister combo, but it's interesting to see that because that does make the complete protein.
Modern restaurants and I guess health hype catching up with indigenous knowledge, right? So again, we're getting back to our roots and getting back to what some cultures have known for many, many hundreds or even thousands of years. All right, so where can you get your beans? So again, I mentioned earlier, I wanted to bring something tonight that would look familiar to you all, that you felt like you could reproduce these recipes based on things you could go and get in pretty much any grocery store. There are some foods, so if you're stopping in a Whole Foods, or even I live in New Haven, so Edge of the Woods, which is our local health food market, has a bulk section. They have more oats and nuts than they have beans, but they do have beans and a few different varieties of lentils, which is wonderful. So I do, when I made the recipe last week to try it out, they did have the white beans in their bulk section, so that was why I opted to try the white beans with the ham recipe. So in a bulk food section, we can certainly buy them online. There are farms that are specializing now in heritage grains, where you can buy a share, just like you would buy, we've talked about this in the past. So Masaro, where I worked, offers a vegetable share, and what that's called is a CSA. That's really an acronym for community supported agriculture, but when you hear that term, CSA or share, it just means that you are paying the farmer directly for items that you are getting from them directly. So it takes out the middleman of the market. And this year, I'm happy to say that Masaro is actually partnering with an organization up in Massachusetts that is growing grains, and they include both beans and grains. So I'm really excited that we are actually going to get, like, you buy a size of a share that fits your household, and they send it to you in one shipment, and it comes in the wintertime, naturally, because these are items that were probably grown last summer, and they've been dried for a few months, and so we're going to get them end of January, early of February, I think. And then we'll have that, to bring us into the late spring and early summer when we start getting vegetables here. So it'll be a nice way to try something, both regional food-wise, things that grow in our region, and then you're supporting farms that do this work, that preserve heirloom varieties. Certain varieties that you might not be used to seeing on the supermarket shelf, just the way I bring vegetables here from the farms that we don't often see in the supermarket because they're grown in small quantities or they're heirloom varieties. So that's another way. And then there are larger organizations, and the one that has become very famous is one in California called Rancho Gordo, where they are actually preserving some of these heirloom varieties and doing them on quite a large scale. So it is commercial farming, but you can order them direct from the farm. So ordering online is just the option. So share or CSA, your local health food market in bulk. Look, Goya's just fine, especially if you're only doing it periodically, but I just wanted to mention these other options as places that you can look for things. It's always fun to try a recipe or try a meal with something that you have not, a bean that maybe you haven't experienced before, especially if it grows in your region. So, having said that, we're gonna move on to the important part here, which is the actual cooking. I do want to mention, so the first thing I'm going to put together for you is going to be this salad with the black beans that we soaked and cooked. And I wanted you to taste something that I did cook these beans with some salt, pepper, a bay leaf, and I added a little bit of liquid smoke. So if you or anyone you know is a vegetarian, or you simply just don't have bones, right? You may not be buying in enough quantity where you have a bone. This is a wonderful thing. It's inexpensive. It is vegetarian, vegan friendly because it is simply an extract made from water and wood chips, right? So it's a distillation. It's like when you smoke things over a fire over a long period of time, essentially you are getting the flavor of wood, and it gives you a really nice, deep, rich flavor where you don't have to be using a bean. So the black beans that you have, oh, it smells great in the house too, and you only need, this bottle is about $6 or $7. I use a teaspoon for the entire recipe. So it's very potent. You don't need a lot. It will last a long time on your shelf. It's actually, you can add it to meats actually, and some cooks do use it for smoking meats over a long period of time. So I grew up in Hawaii. They like to roast pig over a, either over an open fire or in an oven built in the sand. And to reproduce that recipe, I have made pork, Kahlua pig style, using liquid smoke here on the East Coast. It's very reminiscent of flavors that I remember from growing up. So I'm going to assemble using the black beans that I cooked with a little bit of liquid smoke, salt, pepper, and bay leaf, a salad for you that is also going to incorporate some chickpeas, which are canned, capers, some parsley, and a little bit of onion. And then I'm going to whisk together a dressing. And maybe once I finish with that, we can even start serving folks, or if you want, we can wait. The last item I was going to make for you was some homemade refried beans. Now, I know a lot of us, if we're not used to eating Spanish-style food, we might think that's not really my thing. Refried beans are simply a mashed pinto bean with seasonings added. Now, traditionally, I think indigenous folks have often used lard, but I'm going to use for heart-healthy olive oil today. I'm going to blend them in the food processor with just a little bit of seasonings, and I brought some chips for you to dip in them. These are great if you want to do make-ahead meals. So on the farm, we're often very busy during the summer months. We will make a batch of this and make burritos that we then freeze, and then we've got ready-made, handheld lunch ready to go during the peak of the season when we are super busy. So just an idea of different ways you can actually be using this in a meal where you make it ahead and then you can freeze it, and it's very easy to take out and eat and also very good for you. All right, so let me just go ahead and measure out our black beans. So this is about 4 cups total of beans in this salad. So I'm going to use mostly, you can use 3 different kinds of beans if you like. I could have added some of the white beans if I wanted to. I'm just going to stick with black beans and a little chickpeas today. But depending on what you decide, you know, you're going to change the color of your salad, and a lot of what we eat is about color as well. So make sure it's things that excite your palate and keep you interested in eating. I've got some capers, nice little flavor there, a little salty flavor. Chop up some fresh cilantro, and I've got somewhere here. Do you see it in front of me? I do have a cucumber somewhere.
Might be in the fridge.
Oh, okay. I will check.
I can look for you.
All right, thanks, because I did bring a cucumber. So a little bit of cucumber, just because, I mean, if you like red pepper, you can do red pepper. Having some nice yellow or red pepper is going to infuse your salad with some vitamin C. It's really odd.
So this is what I...
Oh, yeah. So this is the one I brought. Is that why you were confused? Because you brought one too?
Yeah, well,
Okay. So we brought the same thing. Yeah. You can also, if you like, just do this salad with 1 type of bean and then maybe some quinoa. So that'll actually change the texture as well and give you another type of protein. Has everybody here eaten with quinoa? It's pretty common now. There was a time when it was new, but okay. Yeah, and quinoa is another, you know, we often think of it as a grain, but it is another source of protein. So that's another way to get some protein and some more texture in your salad. All right. Any questions about what we talked about in the presentation with the slide?
Oh, yeah, as long as Katie is finished with her
Yes, I am.
PowerPoint.
Yes, absolutely.
Then we will have Josh switch the cameras over
Sorry
so we
about
can
that,
see
Josh.
the prep surface and the cook surface.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah. Yeah, because Katie can't see what's on the screens right now. So, and voila. Ask and you shall receive from the heavens. We have Katie cooking. But Josh, I don't know if it's the prep cam and the hood cam. I see a hood cam, but the prep cam is on Katie right now. So switch the prep cam over to the, there you go. Well, now they're both there. Beautiful. He's the wizard back there. I'm telling you, full done production system back there. We just, you know, I was looking at this can and I was thinking of the liquid you get from the beans and
Yes.
stuff. And we just, we were just mentioning this last Thursday. We had an event here featuring gingerbread men, healthy version of it. And now I have it in my head to use the aquafaba, the liquid from what's left over in the beans. Most of us just throw it out and we rinse it off, but you can actually use it you can whip that into a whipped cream.
It's an
topping.
egg substitute, basically.
Yeah, and we were talking about how if you're not a meat-based person, you can use that as a dressing, and you can use it as salad mixtures. As Katie mentioned, the egg substitute.
You can actually bake with it as a replacement for eggs. So
It was really impressive, and we used just a little bit of honey and vanilla, and we made a topping for the gingerbread men, and we put it in a pastry bag, piped it out. It was awesome.
all right. So I have a little bit of onion finely chopped for you, which I'm going to add to this. Yeah, the recipe for this, you can actually leave the onion out, but because raw onion can often be a little bit strong, the recommendation was to rinse it, or you can even let it sit in a bowl of cold water for about 5 or 10 minutes, and it just takes the really strong sort of bite of raw onion out. You can use red onion if you like. So I've got all my ingredients here in the bowl, and I'm going to whip together just really quickly a basic dressing. And again, use what vinegar you like. Apple cider vinegar, white vinegar, red wine vinegar. I have a little balsamic here today, and I'm going to put a little bit of seasoning in it, but I'm just going to do a quick dressing for you all. So this is about a 1/4 cup of olive oil and a 1/4 cup of vinegar. And then I'm going to whisk in some Dijon mustard, a touch of honey, and a little seasoning. So one of the things that I've been able to do since stepping out of my full-time role as director at the farm is continue my education. And part of that education has involved beekeeping. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard me here talking about bees before, but we wait until the end of the summer to pull or harvest the honey from the hives so that we make sure that the bees have enough to survive the winter. But I've got some fresh honey here, and earlier today, I was at the farm doing bottling the last of the honey. So once you extract it all from the frames, it's usually in a storage tank or in a bunch of buckets. And as you all know, it's been quite cold, so we had to warm it up to get it viscous enough so that it would actually flow into the jars. And I think we got something like, let's see, I probably did about 4 cases today, and then we had help from another beekeeper about a week ago. And I think we wound up with about 300 pounds of honey, which was about 12 cases of 8-ounce bottles. Yeah. And that's a good year. I talked to quite a few beekeepers because it was so dry the second half of this summer, whose bees struggled. So they can certainly make less, and you don't want to leave them without food for the winter, because the honey is really their sustenance. And then, we take what we can while not robbing them entirely. But we want to make sure that they always have enough left in the hive. Now, the one thing this salad will actually, because it's mostly beans, it will keep for about 4 or 5 days in the refrigerator. And also, I think it's better, it can be better if you leave it for like an hour so that the beans actually absorb some of the dressing. If you've ever done like a 3-bean salad or anything like that, you might get more of the dressing flavor absorbed by letting it sit. This is great for parties because it doesn't have to be refrigerated or heated, which is wonderful. So you can make it and it can sit at room temperature for several hours and nobody's going to get sick from it. So that's why it's another reason it's a good thing to take along when you're having a gathering. All right. So that is that. So again, I was thinking that you know, you could decide, maybe some diced red pepper. Certainly there's nothing wrong with doing cherry tomatoes, but remember that the more you can add these things if you like, and the more color you see, the more vitamins and minerals, like more cross-pollination of that kind of stuff you are going to see, especially at this time of year when our bodies need more of that. All right, so having done that, I'm gonna set that aside and let Mike, let me just open this for you.
So is there anyone that does not want to try the bean salad? I was going to say shame on you.
What type of seasoning did I use? Okay, so I actually, I brought a couple different things. I mean, almost anytime you make salad dressing, salt, pepper, and then maybe garlic. So you could do garlic. I brought garlic powder with me. I also brought cumin. And then I brought like an Italian blend of Mrs. Dash. So I've got a few different things. I also really like to use this. This is Jane's mixed up salt. If you've ever seen this in the grocery store, it's sort of a mixture of those common things we use all the time. So salt, pepper, oregano, garlic, onion, and yeah, that's all it really lists. So this is great for almost anything, right? A little bit of meat on your eggs in the morning. You know, if you have a soup and it's bland, you can add a little bit of this. It's kind of like, anyway, I like that. You can't always find it in every grocery store, but it is really handy because it's like a compilation, as I said, of those things that we're using almost all the time separately. And so if you don't cook enough to like buy them all separately, I've noticed the containers getting bigger and bigger at the store. I don't mind that. I realize it's economical. However, you don't want your spices to sit so long that they really start to degrade. So I'm always a little nervous about that. You know, I was actually going to add some onion to these pinto beans, and then I realized if I do that now, it's going to be raw. So I'm not going to do that. But I did put some onion in when I was cooking them. So I will add some of the other spices that I have used. So that is entirely optional for you. I just wanted to show you what I have here. So we might need a plate to like fish out. The meat in the bone is sitting on top. So we might need something to put this in.
Okay.
Maybe one of these would probably be okay.
They got a hold in there?
Yeah.
Is there enough?
Yeah. To dish that out. So maybe ladle it out. And then we can also like add the meat back in. I just want to make sure we get the bone out. And it's usually like, it's often in two pieces because it's a joint. There you go. There you go. And I brought the extra because there was so much of it.
Sure.
All right. So as I was mentioning, I did cook the pinto beans. They are recommended after you soak them to cook for about 60 minutes. So I did about half of that, or maybe slightly more than half of that at home. And then I brought them here and I let them simmer a little bit more as we were getting started. Now you want to use extra liquid when you are cooking with these, so you can add your seasonings, your salt, pepper, your bay leaf, a little bit of onion or garlic, but you want there to be extra liquid in there because when you are making refried beans, as Mike was talking about the liquid that comes from chickpeas, you want to have some of that liquid reserved to add in addition to some oil to actually season and give you a nice smooth puree. So there is a little bit of liquid at the bottom of this, and I think it's going to be just enough, which is perfect. And then I've also got, as I said, some healthy olive oil, and we're just going to keep this really simple. This is almost going to be like making pesto, except we're doing it with beans, okay?
Would you like me to take the meat out of the crock pot, or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, are there any vegetarians here? I'm guessing not, since we advertise this as a ham and bean. Okay, so there is, yeah, we took the main bean, since I cooked a whole, you know, ham bone in this.
My whole thing is there. That's what this is.
Oh, yeah, that's just.
I'm just going to put it there for now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I just wanted to mention, like, yeah, there's plenty of meat in here. You might get, every once in a while, people find, like, it doesn't happen often, but a small piece of bone, right? For something that cooks and gets really soft like this. But as I was mentioning, so this has the white northern beans, I use some potato, carrots, celery, onion. And I think I even threw in, because I had them from my farm share, I was talking about the great use of using root crops. So I had some sweet turnips. These are little white turnips called Hakurei turnips that a lot of our local farms grow in the fall. They're very easy to grow, and they're great because you can use them raw or cooked. So I threw in a few Hakurei turnips as well. So Mike is breaking down the meat in there for you so that it's nice, smaller chunks and not huge pieces. And we will dish that up for you, and it smells great. So again, cooked for an hour in the pressure cooker, and that didn't include the 10 or 15 minutes on either end for it to like come up to steam and then come back down again. And while he's doing that, I brought my handy dandy, this is my 25-year-old Cuisinart food processor.
I wanted to just comment quickly. So the Instapot, they can vary anywhere from $69, $70 at Target up to $130 at like a Williams-Sonoma.
Yeah.
So fair, reasonable. If you get them on sale, you can probably get one in the mid-60s on sale. If you're coupon thrifty, you could probably get it, a little off, but they're worth it because you can do so much with them.
Yeah.
Like that.
And this is an off-brand. This is not the Instapot brand either. This is something else. Yeah, I can't even see what it says, but I tested it a couple times to make sure it would work for you all.
It
But
worked
yeah,
great. I mean, the meat fell right off the bone. The bone
Yes.
separated, and it was perfect.
You did it in a crock pot, just like 10 hours?
yeah, it may be 8. Yeah. I'm trying to think because I just used my crock pot as well the other day to cook a different soup, and I had beans in that one. And you can do, so crock pots generally have 2 settings if you haven't cooked in a crock pot, and they are usually low, high, and then stay warm. The newer ones even have the digital settings, so you can set the timer, which is great because then you don't forget about it. If you have an old school one, it's usually just on off. But yeah, I would see 3 to 4 hours on high or 6 to 8 hours on low. So you can certainly put that on, leave it, and leave comfortably, and it will cook down, to the equivalent of this. Yeah.
So Josh, I know you're helping us out with our production. This was the bean salad. I'm showing you on the camera here. Everyone already tasted that, which is great. And then I'm sure you can see here with this camera, this was the bean soup that we're going to be handing out shortly. Just for those viewing online, in case they wanted to see what that looked like coming out of that little pressure Instapot cooker.
Yeah.
So I think for the sake of finishing up here and being able to serve you some of the soup, we'll probably wrap up the live portion of this, the virtual side of it, I mean. So I didn't see any questions that came through from our audience, so that means Katie just did a phenomenal job. We did have someone that said that they were going to make this recipe. Someone who works at Griffin was watching, so thank you, Dave. But does anyone here have any more questions for Katie or I before we sign off? No? All right. So let me come back around here and just thank everyone for being in person. Thank anyone that viewed us online. Again, just to close out, we were at the Center for Healthy Living in Oxford, Connecticut. Tonight's feature was a ham and bean soup, and we had a great educational slide deck on beans and indigenous peoples, how they used to use them, and the 3 sister analogy, which was cool. Josh and I were chatting about that a minute ago. So stay tuned for more events coming from the Center for Healthy Living. We have a new year upon us. January we'll start with topics that are starting with, kicking off the new year on the right way, eating healthier, cleaner. We go into Heart Health Month, and then we just take right off on. So look for more of these events coming. If you wanted to see how you would see these, they're usually posted on our website, griffinhealth.org/teaching-kitchen. If you just went to griffinhealth.org/events, you can filter through and see those there also. The other thing you'll find is some of our wellness classes. Katie mentioned how beans can help with type 2 diabetes. We just happen to have 2 classes that are going to be starting here in January. One is for people that are dealing with pre-diabetes, so people that have an A1C of 5.9 up to around 6.3. That's an opportune cohort of people that we want to get early. We want to get them going before they become diabetic. And then we also have a class for people how to manage diabetes. So these are people that are already diabetic. And we have a class coming that will show them how to manage that. So both of those classes are live on that web page that I told you, griffinhealth.org/events. You can register for them. They are free of charge for the community. Each class we can fit around 16 to 18 people in. All right? And it is taught by a certified diabetic educator. All right?
And are those classes, like I know the classes we were doing stay on the YouTube channel, so if people missed them or couldn't get here tonight, they will be posted on YouTube. What about the upcoming classes? Will they be recorded?
So the wellness classes are not recorded.
Okay,
Those
so
are
get
done
in on
in
that.
person.
Yeah. Right.
And they're going to be here. So be on the lookout. If you have any questions, there's a submission link on that website for questions. All right, so thank you, everyone. We're going to sign off. Have a great evening, a safe and blessed holiday for those of you that celebrate Christmas. I'm one of them. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you in the new year.
Great, thank you. All right, now I can turn this on.